Good evening. This is Mayor Dean Brookie, and I reconvene this special meeting of Durango City Council meeting at 6:46 p.m. For the record, council met in executive session to discuss a personnel matter, specifically to discuss personnel matters involving the 3 council appointees regarding the COVID-19 related budgetary issues as permitted in CRS 24-6-402F2. No decisions were made. If anyone who participated in the executive session believes the discussion went beyond the proper scope of the executive session, please state your objections now. Hearing none, I adjourn this meeting. So folks, thank you. Now I'd like to convene the regular meeting of Durango City Council for May 5th, 2020. I'm Mayor Brookie, and I'd like to have a roll call.
Councilor Bettine.
Here.
Councilor Noseworthy.
Present.
Councilor Youssef.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter.
Present.
And Mayor Brookie.
Here. Thank you, Ben. As the public may know, this is a virtual meeting. We are not in City Hall. We are in separate locations and brought to you via Zoom this evening. And as we will be for probably the next month while we endure this pandemic. That said, I would like to continue on with our regular agenda, which is published and for the public to follow us and identify any actual or perceived conflicts of interest of any councilors this evening. Hearing none, I'll move on to public participation. Amber Blake, do we have any public participation that has been sent in or that we would like to read into the record this evening?
Yes, we do, Mayor Brookie and members of the City Council. This evening we have, where's my email here? Okay. 4 public comments under public participation. The first public participation is from Amina Youssef. And she did not cite her email or her address. Amina Youssef, Colorado needs your help. You have noticed that we lack solar energy in Southwest Colorado, have you? Have you ever wondered why we are so reliant on coal? Plain and simple, Tri-State wants to take away our right to build solar in Southwest Colorado. Tri-State only allows 5% of energy to be produced by locally generated renewable energy. They are trying to let Trump and his renewable administration future of our energy. Please help us become independent from Tri-State so that we can
Excuse me, Amber, can we you're breaking up a little bit. Can we start over with that just a little bit ago, about 2 sentences back? And yeah, we're just cracking up a little bit for our broadcast.
Your speaker is not working. Okay.
It is now.
Okay, it still says that it's not. Okay, well, we will continue. Tri-State only allows 5% of energy to be produced by locally generated renewable energy. Please help us become independent from Tri-State so we can produce clean energy for Colorado. How can you help? By sending an email. Simple as that. Go to my Facebook page, Amina Youssef, AminaYoussef, and click on the link. It is in my most recent post, and share with friends and family as well. When you click on the link, fill out your name, address, email, and phone number, and press the Stand Up for Colorado button. It takes 30 seconds. If we cannot, we will lose the right to build solar energy in Southwest Colorado as the contract sees through 2050. Let Colorado sign its own future. Stand up for our beautiful state that you call home. Do you like participating in the outdoors and having clean environment to play in? Then protect our playground by participating in projects. Send an email and play your part. The next public participation is from Spencer Compton. Dear Mayor Youssef and members of the City Council, as I am writing as the chair of the Multimodal Advisory Board without prior discussion of my position with the other Multimodal Advisory Board members as it relates to Council's working agreement around the rules of engagement. I believe that as chair, without the contribution of the other members as it pertains to the effectiveness and functionality of MAB. I understand the council draft is to adopt it at its May meeting.
Amber,
Right?
it's still breaking.
Doing it again.
So maybe the mayor should try reading.
Dean, do you have a copy of this? Does that work? I just made changes to my,
I can,
I'm very happy to try myself if you need me to, but I'll need to pull them up, but I can.
I do have them, if that would be appropriate.
She just seems to be breaking up too often. It's really hard to understand the message.
I'm sorry.
Sure. If that's appropriate, Amber, it's the May 5th letter from Spencer Compton, and I will start from the beginning if that's appropriate. I'm writing as chair, dear Mayor and City Council members, I'm writing as chair of the Multimodal Advisory Board without prior discussion of my position with other MAB members as it relates to Council's working agreement around rules of engagement. I believe that as chair, it is my prerogative to submit the following observations without the contribution of other members as it pertains to the effectiveness and functionality of the Multimodal Advisory Board. I understand that the City Council drafted and is prepared to adopt at its May 5th meeting, Durango City Council Working Agreement, Rules of Engagement, in an effort to clarify the conduct between the members of City Council and their constituency, and has described specific rules of conduct for how to interact with members of the city boards and commissions. I was encouraged to know that part of this effort was to clarify, to clearly articulate the relationship between council and advisory boards and increase transparency in the council's process. I am therefore dismayed as to why rule number 11 from the April 21st, 2020 agenda packet was omitted from the version to be considered at the May 5th meeting. It states, council members will work to honor the roles of the board and commissions as offering advice and recommendations to all of council as a whole, and will strive to avoid exercising undue influence over decision-making by those boards and commissions, or by attempting to influence the decision-making of individual members of those boards and commissions, end quote. From my point of view, this rule should be included, adopted, and understood as fundamental, in caps, to functionality of the advisory boards and the role of the council. I think that I can think of no reason as to why council members should be allowed to influence members of the advisory boards to make any decisions whatsoever, as it defeats the point of offering objective advice to council. The city boards and commissions were created to advise council, not to be advised by council. The members of the boards consist of a wide range of dedicated volunteers who put a considerable amount of time and effort into their contributions. The opinions of those members, the public they represent, and the collective recommendations by the respective boards should remain objective without influence by council we have been asked to advise. The new rule 9, number 9, that communications between council and advisory boards and commissions should be done to the greatest extent possible, from body to body to honor positions taken by council and each board as a whole, is no substitute for this important distinction. I hope you will take this into consideration during your discussion at tonight's meeting. Sincerely, Spencer Compton, Chair, Multimodal Advisory Board.
Right. Thank you, Dean. I updated my speaker and my mic, so if we want to try again, I have 2 more. If not, Dirk has them as well. But I will start, and if it breaks out, then Dirk has these as well. The next email is from Mark Smith, Chair of the Natural Lands Preservation Advisory Board. Dear council members, With respect to the caption document that was reviewed and discussed by City Council on April 21st, as Chair of the Natural Lands Preservation Advisory Board, I have strong objection to the potential removal or modification of item 11, which addresses the role of the council liaison to the board. The item, as written and not modified, is completely appropriate. Here I quote the original from item 11, quote, "Council members will work to honor the roles of the boards and commissions as offering advice and recommends to all of council as a whole, and will strive to avoid exercising undue influence over decision-making by those boards and commissions or by attempting to influence the decision-making of individual members of the boards and commissions." This language has been challenged in the last council meeting by some members of council and is being considered for removal or amendment. I will speak for the Natural Lands Preservation Advisory Board only here. Other boards must address the issue if they feel appropriate.
It's still breaking up, Amber.
Okay.
unfortunately. I'm so
No
sorry.
worries, Dirk, if you want to take that over, you have the rest of the public comment for this evening.
Okay, I'll start at the beginning of that last paragraph. I will speak for the NLPAB only here. Other boards must address this issue as they feel is appropriate. If the council liaison or any council member for that matter is allowed to, quote, exercise undue influence over decision-making by boards and commissions, end quote, or allowed to attempt to, quote, influence the decision-making of individual members of those boards and commissions, end quote, the entire purpose of the advisory board is completely defeated. The overriding purpose of our advisory board is to make recommendations to council regarding matters related to natural lands. Council has no place in attempting to influence the very recommendations that the board is to the council. It is actually quite absurd that this issue has even been made necessary to address. Please, if for some reason this is not obvious to the majority of council, put it in front of the city attorney. This issue should be clear from a legal standpoint. An advisory board is intended to advise, not to be manipulated by the very body it is charged with advising. Thank you for your consideration, Mark Smith, Chair, Natural Lands Preservation Advisory Board. I have one more from Richard Holheim. It says, I want to express my appreciation to City Council for taking time in recent meetings to draft and discuss suggested operating principles regarding how to maximize transparency and effectiveness in your governing roles. These principles, as presented at your April 21st council meeting, seem to me to represent a list of common sense guidelines that offer clarity on a number of important matters related to communication and decision-making, both internally and with constituents and citizen boards. I imagine the principles originally offered would qualify as examples of best practices that would presumably be considered non-controversial and readily adoptable. It was therefore both a surprise and a concern to me as I listened to council's consideration of these original 14 principles to learn that there was not full agreement and endorsement of several important items on the list, which have been removed from the revised draft, which you will consider at tomorrow's council meeting. I am hopeful that you will revisit these deleted items in full, as their absence leaves unaddressed some questions about appropriate versus inappropriate behavior relevant to the conduct of city affairs and council interactions with others on matters of official business. I particularly would reference items number 9 and number 11 from the original list that impact relations with city advisory boards, such as the one I serve on. Not including those statements of principle in the final draft would seem to suggest that council is encouraging or at least allowing the opposite of such behavior to be seen as acceptable and appropriate, and how individual councilors can choose to handle their communications with and influencing of their constituents and appointed boards. It is difficult for me to understand what makes the above referenced principles, as well as others removed from the original draft and not part of your revised list, seen as not valid, useful, or otherwise worthy of inclusion to help improve clarity on how to further promote open, transparent, democratic process at both the council and board levels. I also would suggest that having these added guidelines put back into your final draft document would help many of us as advisory board members to have a clear understanding about how city councilors should be relating to us and vice versa when considering matters relevant to our service to the city. Thank you in advance for your consideration of these points. Richard Holheim, Chair, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. So that's it for public comment. There are others that are attributable to the URA, but those will be read later.
Thank you, Derek. Is there any other public comments? That you said that was the end of it, so
Okay.
there's no other public comments. We will move into proclamations and presentations. So agenda item 5.1, we have a National Day of Prayer proclamation. Are there folks that are joining us to accept this proclamation?
Yes, Pinky Harper is here to accept the proclamation.
Welcome, Pinky. Thank you very much for being here. I will read it, and then you, if you have any comments after that, I'd be glad to open it up to your comments. So we have the proclamation for the National Day of Prayer, May 7th, 2020. Whereas authors of the Declaration of Independence recognize that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas the National Day of Prayer, established in 1952 and defined by President Ronald Reagan as the first Thursday in May, provides Americans with the chance to congregate in celebration of these endowed rights. And whereas each citizen has the freedom to gather, the freedom to worship, and the freedom to pray, whether in public or in private. And whereas on May 7th, 2020, individuals in Durango across the state and nation will be in prayer for our country, our state, our leaders, and our people. Now, therefore, I deem Brookie, as Mayor of Durango, Colorado, to hereby proclaim May 7th, 2020 as the National Day of Prayer in Durango, Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the local National Day of Prayer Committee, thank you for acknowledging the National Day of Prayer and for your support of the faith community as we seek God's blessings and guidance for our leaders in government, schools, military, families, businesses, the media, and churches. This year, there will not be a local gathering due to the restrictions with group gatherings, but we would like to invite you to join in the national observance that will take place at the Capitol. It will be Thursday, May 7th, 6 to 8 p.m. local time, and the event will be broadcast on the website nationaldayofprayer.org and other media outlets. And especially more than ever during these challenging times, we hope you can join fellow Americans around the country in prayer for our nation and for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Pinky, and congratulations. Yeah. We have another proclamation, and as usual, proclamations are primarily for the purpose of creating awareness to the public. And this is one I was not aware of, but it's proclamation for Stop the Bleed Month. Do we have a participant for this proclamation?
Yes, hi, this is Teresa Kraft.
Good evening, Teresa. Welcome. Welcome to City Council virtually.
Thank you.
So I'll read this and give you a chance to comment if you have any comments to add.
Okay.
Stop the Bleed Month, May 2020. Whereas Stop the Bleed, a national public health awareness campaign, was launched in October of 2015 by the White House with a call to action to begin training more people to become immediate responders until professional help arrives. And whereas the National Stop the Bleed Day is supported by the Department of Defense, the American College of Surgeons, the Department of Homeland Security, the Red Cross, and many other organizations across the country. And whereas the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma first publicly introduced bleeding control training courses for its members in October 2016, and hundreds of other medical professionals have since been trained to become course instructors. And whereas the official designated National Stop the Bleed Day is observed on May 23rd throughout the nation. And whereas as of September 2019, more than 1 million people around the world have been trained to save a life through the ACS Stop the Bleed program. And whereas the Stop the Bleed initiative is designed to make our nation more resilient by better preparing members of the public to save lives if there were wounded nearby who are severely bleeding. And whereas state and community leaders can help to spread the word about the importance of being prepared, getting trained, and improving quality of life for all. And whereas members of the Southwest Colorado are striving to make Durango the face of Colorado's Stop the Bleed initiative on a state level. And whereas empowering citizens in our city by educating and providing resources to prepare for an emergency makes our community a safer one in which to live. Now, therefore, I, Dean Brookie, Mayor of Durango, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Stop the Bleed Month, and urge citizens to seek out training and equip themselves in order to be prepared to make a difference until help arrives. Mayor Dean Brookie, thank you.
Yay, thank you.
I made it.
I know. Okay, I have a little thing that I'm going to read. So on behalf of Chinook Medical Gear, we would like to thank Mayor Dean Brookie and the city of Durango for proclaiming May as Stop the Bleed Month in Durango, Colorado. By implementing this proclamation, it is our hope that this will raise awareness of the Stop the Bleed National Public Health Awareness Campaign. I'd like to share a short background about the National Stop the Bleed initiative. Following the Connecticut Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in December of 2012, a local trauma surgeon of the American College of Surgeons, ACS, reviewed autopsy results of victims who died and found them to be from severe bleeding injuries. These findings prompted the trauma surgeon to form a group of experts in the fields of emergency medical care, government, and law enforcement in order to discuss the matter in greater detail. The group developed expert recommendations on how to improve survival rates for victims with severe bleeding following mass shootings and empower bystanders to become immediate responders, providing life-saving action. I'm okay? Oh, sorry. Providing life-saving action until professional help arrives. As a result, the Hartford Consensus was formed, and subsequently the National Stop the Bleed public awareness campaign was launched in October 2015. Chinook Medical Gear was one of the few companies that was recognized by the White House on Tuesday, October 6, 2015, as a leader in promoting the Stop the Bleed initiative. Chinook was chosen due to the company's expertise in early advancements of public access bleeding control kits. The Stop the Bleed initiative has continued to grow since October 2015, with a focus on bringing awareness and training to the individuals, giving them the ability to become an immediate responder in the event of an unexpected act of violence or injury during daily lives, in the workplace, on the highway, at schools, or any other public places. As of September 2019, more than 1 million people around the world have been trained to save a life through the ACS Stop the Bleed program. Chinook Medical Gear's goal is to raise awareness about the National Stop the Bleed initiative and to showcase Southwest Colorado, specifically Durango, as the face of this initiative on a state level, and to help drive Colorado legislation towards a traumatic injury response protocol like the states of Texas and Indiana have done. Remember, minutes count. Someone who is severely bleeding can bleed to death in as little as 5 minutes. That is why bleeding control, keeping the blood inside the body, is the purpose of the Stop the Bleed initiative. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. And thankfully there's people like you instead of
Thank
people
you.
like me. There's a reason I went into architecture school instead of medical school, and that is it. But thanks, and appreciate you being with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
With that, we'll move on to review of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is intended to include items that are routine or non-controversial in nature. And with that, I will ask for a reading of the consent agenda. And after the reading, ask if there are any counselors that would like to remove any of the items included in the consent agenda.
Thank you. Items 6.1 and 6.2 are approval of minutes. Item 6.1 is from the study session on April 14th, 2020. And item 2 is from the regular meeting on April 21st, 2020. Item 6.3 is a request for a public hearing to consider the South Fork Storage Expansion Plan Development Preliminary Plan and Conditional Use Permit. And then item 6.4 and 6.5 are final approvals. Item 6.4 is for ordinance 2021, authorizing a lease between the City of Durango and the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club in in Brookside Park and declaring an effective date. And then item 6.5 is the final approval for ordinance O 2020-2, amending chapter 23 of the Durango Code of Ordinances for taxation to adopt standardized sales tax definitions and to apply those definitions in the provisions of the code related to the imposition and collection of sales tax and declaring an effective date.
Thank you, Ben. Are there any counselors that would like to remove a consent agenda item? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second
Do I
that.
hear a- Thank you, Kim. It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
Yes.
Councilor Bettine,
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy,
Yes.
Councilor Youssef,
Yes.
and Mayor Bricky.
Yes. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to legislative and policy-related hearings, item 9.1.1, which is a public hearing to consider resolution 2020-10, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Durango to find and declare that there is a need for an urban renewal authority and to establish an urban renewal authority. With that, do we have a presentation? Or do we move on to consideration of this request?
Good evening, Mayor.
Here we go. Thank you. If you could
My name
introduce
is-
yourself, we'll get into the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Brookie, members of the council. My name is Scott Shine. I'm the planning manager with the City of Durango Community Development Department. And myself and Alex Rugoff, the business development coordinator, will give you a brief presentation and then are available to answer questions as you move into action on these resolutions. We're very excited to be with you tonight. As you know, it's been a long process to get to this point where we have two resolutions for consideration. First, to form Durango's first urban renewal authority, which will do business as the Durango Renewal Partnership. And second, to appoint commissioners to govern the operations of that newly formed authority. We were originally scheduled to come before you on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. We had everything teed up and we're ready to go. And we were thinking about how nice a Guinness would taste after the meeting on March 17th. And now here we are on May 5th, postponed for obvious reasons, thinking about how nice a margarita is going to taste after action is taken on urban renewal authority formation. So we'll always find a unique reason to celebrate. But we're still coming with you in spite of the postponement, coming to you with what I think is fair to consider really a groundswell of community support and consensus around the need for forming a URA and excitement about the opportunities that a URA will bring to our community. So we'll talk more about the community support, which has come out of the outreach and education that we've done. And really, as we've told you all along, we want to keep that spirit and that ethic and mentality behind the organization as we get started. And that's why we've chosen to brand it and name it as the Durango Renewal Partnership. We feel like that really captures what we want to accomplish, both partnering with the private sector to target investment in our community and support appropriate development, and also partnering with other local government and community institutions like the school district, like the Durango Business Improvement District, to really make it effective for all the partners involved. So that's the thought behind Durango Renewal Partnership. And as we've gone through, a couple of years of outreach and education, evaluating different options, looking for the right path for Durango, we feel very confident that this is the right tool for our community, and especially now as we think about economic recovery and really supporting the community through appropriate investment. We think the URA is going to play a crucial role in helping us recover and come out stronger from the current moment we're in. We've had a great team of people helping us develop the documents that you've all seen and hopefully read, and do the research that we need. You'll hear from Alex Rugoff in a little bit. He's done a lot of work to get this ready. We've had help from SEH, a local planning and engineering firm, and Andy Arnold has provided a lot of assistance, especially in the conditions survey. Mike Segrist with the county, who we anticipate will be the county appointee on the board. Carrie Woodson, the county assessor, have all provided a lot of insight and help in shaping how this will look. I'd like to especially thank City Attorney Dirk Nelson for his time reviewing all the documents, and also our legal counsel, Paul Benedetti, who's on the call and will be available to answer any questions, has helped us make sure this whole process complies with state statute, all the requirements to be ready to form the URA and take action effectively. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alex, and he'll talk a little bit more about sort of the next steps and how excited we are to really get going with implementing the tools that the URA brings. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. I'm Alex Rugoff, Business Development Coordinator for the City of Durango. Good evening, council members and City of Durango residents. As staff, we take our direction from council, and one of council's top goals for 2019 and 2020 is an urban renewal authority, otherwise known as the URA. URAs are used widely across Colorado to facilitate economic development projects through public-private partnerships. A URA in Durango is uniquely able to help us address some of our affordable housing and affordable housing, attainable housing supply. Could help us achieve some of our mobility and transit goals, as well as enhance our overall quality of life. While this is a city-led initiative, we've also been taking a lot of time to gather community feedback and support for this effort. Community development staff, primarily Scott Shine and I, have been going on what we like to call a roadshow, and have been going to our local government and nonprofit partners to, one, educate them about the URA, but more importantly, receive feedback on what some of their goals are. We're proud and thrilled that every single one of these organizations has endorsed the URA through either a resolution or a letter of support. A lot of these organizations realize that it's going to take public-private partnerships and creative financing approaches to achieve some of our goals. For example, 9R sees the URA is critical to addressing some of their affordable housing goals projects. And so we're glad to have it. I've traveled across Colorado and been to some good URA conferences and forums, from Pueblo and Colorado Springs to Montrose. And one thing I've seen, one consistent theme I've seen across successful URAs is having early community support and gathering feedback. So it's not just the one entity leading it, but it's really bringing the community organizations together and finding a shared vision and coming together to achieve that goal. And I think where URA has been really successful, it's been a community-driven approach, and that's why we've taken several months over the past 2 years to help build that education and that widespread support. We've also, as Scott mentioned, I've been working closely with URA legal expert Paul Benedetti. Paul's on the call tonight and can answer any legal questions council may have. And we've also been working with a local firm, SDH, formerly Russell Engineering, Mike Russell, Nancy Donthal, and Andy Arnold. SDH has helped us conduct this condition survey, which is required under state law to form a URA. Staff has gone out and gathered the 25 signatures and filed a petition with the city clerk. And the next step is to holding a public hearing before consideration of the URA resolution. This would be a major milestone in accomplishing one of Council's goals, but it's also the first step in the longer process to continuing our outreach, creating urban renewal plans, and implementing those plans to achieve whether it's affordable housing, job creation, infrastructure improvements, whatever it may be. This is the first milestone in the longer process of achieving some of our goals. We view the URA as critical to our economic recovery. We're obviously in one of the deepest recessions we have, if not depression, since the Great Depression. And it's going to take a lot of public-private partnerships and collaboration to bring private dollars and investments to our community. URA helps facilitate this. It's been done across the state, and we can implement it here to help diversify our economy, whether it's light industrial development, job creation, affordable housing. The URA is going to play a pivotal role in our recovery and resiliency building. And staff's identified this URA as that, and we're excited and thrilled to be moving forward after this. We feel that couldn't be a better time to implement this.
Thank you,
After
Scott.
the URA is,
Go ahead. Sorry.
and I'll just go quickly on to the next steps. Should council form the URA, Scott and I and community development staff will work to hold a board meeting where we'll get initial feedback on priority areas, what area, initial goals, some policies we want to prioritize. It could be things beyond affordable housing that include public art, for example, or wage creation or new job creation. And there's certainly a number of different ways to incentivize some of those goals. And then the URA board will begin creating these specific urban renewal plans, which are required prior to implementing URA tools such as tactics for financing. And then we'll adopt those plans to begin the implementation.
Excellent, Alex. And thanks, Scott. With that, I'd open it up for council hearing. I first would like to verify that there was no further public participation on this issue, and then open it up for council discussion. Amber, was there any other public participation specific to this issue?
Yes, there are, and I can try, or we can have Dirk go ahead and read that. We have 4 comments under public participation for this item.
Well, you're sounding pretty good right now. Maybe you can give it a try.
I'll give it a go. So the first comment is from Jack Llewellyn. There has never been a more critical or crucial time than now to support the Urban Renewal Authority for the city of Durango. As we begin to recover from COVID-19 pandemic, municipalities will need more than sales tax revenue to support economic prosperity. With the correct structure, a public-private partnership, and the use of tax increment financing tools, redevelopment can be achieved in designated areas within Durango city limits. URAs have a proven track record throughout Colorado. When executed properly, communities can have directed growth, ultimately created jobs, housing, and commercial centers. The next comment is from Tim Walsworth, Executive Director of the Durango Business Improvement District. The Durango Business Improvement District fully supports the formation of the Urban Renewal Authority for Durango. BID believes a URA is key to spurring the type of redevelopment our community needs in areas close to the center of town and throughout town for that matter. The URA is needed now more than ever due to the economic downturn resulting from COVID-19. Thank you for creating a URA for our town. The next comment is from Michael French, Executive Director of the La Plata Economic Development Alliance. On behalf of the La Plata Economic Development Alliance Board and our membership, I would like to express our strong support for the formation of an Urban Renewal Authority under consideration by the City of Durango. In these uncertain times, with our economic future being unknown, it is critical that our community have any and all resources that we can use to assist in our recovery. A URA would be a platform to implement projects that may not be feasible given the current economic scenario. Long-term, the URA is a catalyst for business development and intentional growth. In most cases where a URA is adopted, it has proven to lead to an increase in tax base, which would assist us to collectively fund efforts that lead to economic development. The La Plata Economic Development Alliance is focused on the enablement of the recovery and economic health of La Plata County. We would collaborate heavily with the URA to work on specific projects in both phases of our local economy. These are both short-term and long-term initiatives such as attainable housing, creative financing for public projects like the POSTA infrastructure development, and a public-private partnerships that are beneficial and needed to advance recovery and strategic initiatives. I would like to respectfully ask the members of the City Council to consider and support the formation of an Urban Renewal Authority. And the final comment is from Laura Lewis Marchino, the Executive Director of Region 9. As an economic development district, Region 9 Economic Development District of Southwest Colorado supports the proposed Urban Renewal Authority for Durango. URAs can be a wonderful tool to fund new projects and specifically assist Durango to implement a larger plan that encompasses a variety of properties and businesses to create a cohesive combination of projects that maintain Durango's unique character. And that is the end of the public comment.
Thank you, Amber. With that, open it up for, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Jack, Tim, Mike, and Laura for those excellent comments. It's really important for the success of a URA to have wide support in our community. And these are certainly for the Chamber, the BID, the La Plata Economic Alliance, and the Region 9 would become critical partners in the success and long-term implementation of this URA. So thank you for those comments. With that, we open it up for City Council discussion.
Well, I would like to say thank you. You guys have done a great job with this since several years ago through now. I actually don't have any questions because your presentations have been so informative and so helpful and so thorough. I just want to say kudos, great job. I look forward to participating with you.
I would like to say thank you as well. I agree with Councilor Baxter, Mayor Pro Tem Baxter, and I want to thank you guys for such hard work on an extremely important initiative for us at this critical time. And I just think, it's so great how it shows the unanimity of our community coming together on this issue. Has just been really great to see all of the various leaders come forward and support this initiative and get behind it. It's really great to see. So thank you guys.
I'll jump in as well. Thank you. It was great presentations. The community engagement has been excellent, and I think it's timely and great potential for our community and the area. Thanks.
And I'll just jump in and say thanks as well. We can't improve upon any of those statements, so looking forward to passing it.
Well, thank you, councilors. I just want to add that this started about 8 years ago, or about 7 years ago, and in a discussion about what to do with North Main and what kind of mechanisms and tools we have to incentivize redevelopment along North Main. And so that was the focus back then. And North Main's going through a transition right now. It kind of pre-URA, the staff created character districts. And so the first character district was in fact North Main. Now we have character districts on Camino del Rio. We have character districts on College Drive. We have a number of character districts to really define how we want to grow within our community. So we've got the definition of those, of how and where we want to grow and what that character would be in those specific portions of our community, but we really don't have the tools, the mechanisms, the incentive to go to those property owners, incentivize developers to really create that vision that was envisioned by council about 7 years ago now. So it's been a process, and I can't tell you how happy I am to be mayor here tonight to to see this project potentially be approved, or the establishment of a URA. It's been a long time coming, and thanks for the hard work. And I mean, this was, as I think about it, this was started long before even Scott and Alex even lived in the city of Durango. So that's how long we've been talking about it, and they've really brought it to this point. So thank you very much. And with that, I'd entertain a motion.
Well, I'll jump in here and make a motion to approve the formation of a URA in Durango.
I'll second.
Thank you. I thought I heard emotion, Kim. Is that a motion or an emotion? Is that, either way, we'll take it.
It's an internet motion, so I don't know, a virtual motion, but it is a motion.
Can I jump in and say, I would just ask that you refer to the resolution 2020-10, which is the formation resolution, just to put it on record. Thank you.
Okay, and I will add that that would be resolution 2020-10, a resolution to City Council of the City of Durango, Colorado, to find and declare that there's a need for an urban renewal authority and to establish an urban renewal authority.
Second.
Thank you.
Sure.
A re-second? Barbara, can we get a re-second on that?
Second it.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Counselor Noseworthy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
Yes.
Counselor Bettine,
Yes.
Counselor Youssef,
Yes.
and Mayor Bricky.
Yes. Thank you so much. Moving on then, we have agenda item 9.1.2, which is a public hearing to consider resolution 2020-11, which is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Durango to appoint commissioners to serve as the Urban Renewal Authority. Dirk, are you gonna give a presentation on this, or can we have a reading of the resolution, whichever is appropriate?
I really don't have a presentation. This is just a follow-up action. The agenda does call for a hearing, but we did not receive any public comment on this particular item. But just out of protocol, you might open and close the hearing. But this motion, again, primarily appoints the board members for the URA.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Dirk. We don't need a particular reading of the resolution, a formal reading. Okay. Well then, if that's the case, we will open it up for discussion. I will open the public hearing, and public hearing of which we have no comments, but and then close that public hearing. No, understanding there are no comments, and then we will ask for council participation and discussion on this item. Any thoughts? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll do it again. I would make a motion that we adopt resolution 2020-11, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Durango, Colorado, appointing commissioners to serve as the Urban Renewal Authority.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. May I have a roll call, please?
Counselor Youssef,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
Yes.
Counselor Bettine,
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy,
Yes.
and Mayor Bricky.
Yes. Normally, this is the time when we have a cake or some punch and cookies or something eventful for something that momentous, but instead, we'll just move on. And the next item on our agenda is item 11.1, which is an ordinance granting an easement to the Atmos Energy to install a gas line under Chapman Hill to service the Riverview neighborhood and declaring an effective date. Dirk Nelson, do you have a presentation of any kind, or do we need to just go ahead and...
I'll just say that this follows the action by council at the last meeting to bring forth an ordinance to approve that easement that was described in that meeting. I don't have anything else to add.
Do we have an
Excellent.
ordinance number, Dirk?
You know what? We should, but we don't. Ben, do you know what it is? So it's 2, I think, isn't it?
It's actually going to be ordinance 3.
Great, okay, great.
2023, okay.
That help formulate a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that council adopt an ordinance 2020-3 granting an easement to Atmos Energy to install a gas line under Chapman service of the Riverview neighborhood and declaring an effective date.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Bettine. It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilor Bettine,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy,
Yes.
Councilor Youssef,
Yes.
and Mayor Brookie.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on, then we have administrative items, 12.1, which is a city update from our interim city manager, Amber Blake. And I apologize, I was hopeful of, this is so important to the city of Durango citizens that I attempted to bring this forward in the agenda so that folks didn't have to live through all our debate to get to this point. But she's got some really critical issues to talk about relative to the COVID update. And in future meetings, I'd like to put the COVID update right at the beginning of the council regular meetings so that the constituents can get that information, that critical information at first thing. So with that, Amber, would you give us a city update?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mayor Brookie. So this evening for the city update, I have a number of items for you. The first one relates to COVID-19 and looking at beginning to open city facilities. We are working through the self-certification process, which is required for all businesses, including the city, and operations to open safely under the plan that's been laid out by San Juan Basin Public Health with the Safer La Plata order. So right now we are looking at opening Lake Nighthorse later this month. And we're also opening the recycling center to the public drop-off on May 11th. We will be accepting residential single stream recycling through May. And then the city will reassess e-waste drop-off in June or as new health orders are released. We will have it be mandatory for the public and the employees to wear masks. And we will limit the number of cars on the site at the recycling center to 2, down from 4. And individuals will not be allowed to exit their vehicles until it's their turn to drop off the material. So I would like to encourage our citizens to stay tuned to the city's website, the Durango Herald, and other media outlets, as we will be rolling out information on how facilities will be opening through that self-certification process. The city will be continuing our utility bill waiver, our fee waivers and late fee waivers, and shutoffs, and we'll continue doing the payment plans. That will happen through May. And then we will reassess again at the end of May if we need to continue that in June. We had implemented, the city had implemented a sales tax deferral order, and there are 34 businesses that have applied for the sales tax deferral, and 30 of those businesses have been approved. To date, there are deferrals of $30,106, and those deferrals last for 90 days, and we will work with the businesses for a payment plan on coming due with those sales tax deferrals going into the future. The city will be, I will be issuing an order to temporarily modify Chapter 9 of the City Code of Ordinances. This is part of our recovery process. And the order will state that all commercial properties in the mixed-use zone districts in the city of Durango shall be permitted to use up to 25% of their required on-site parking spaces for purposes other than vehicle parking, including but not limited to seating, merchandise display, and facilitating curbside transactions. This is one of the items that was identified with our economic recovery task force as something that the city could do to allow for additional sales and ease of opening businesses with the Safer La Plata order. For individuals and businesses in the community, if you have not yet seen the self-certification information, it is available on San Juan Basin Health's website, and the staff is there and ready to assist with going through that process. That's COVID items. Then the next thing I have is a crime update. So Part 1 crimes for April, running a 3-year average. We're looking at the two main areas are theft and robbery. And two of the items that the city saw in the month of April was a robbery suspect who was arrested on 2 separate counts of aggravated robbery with a weapon. The city is seeing an increase in certain types of crime during the time that we have been experiencing the pandemic. Part of these are Part 2 crimes, along with traffic and quality of life offenses. Our officers are focused on working with the pandemic and maintaining their social distancing, and have adjusted how we are responding to items. For example, our community engagement team is still working. We're doing patrols in the parks and the open space. We're really focusing on education with social distancing. And now that there's a greater understanding about the preventative measures and their renewed strategies for being implemented and developed to keep our officers safe, the police chief confirmed with me today that he believes that there will be an additional uptick in Part 2 offenses that are reported because of these new strategies that are being implemented going forward. So our officers are out there keeping the community safe. If our citizens have any complaints or concerns, please contact the police department. We want to make sure that our community does stay safe and we maintain our good quality of life. I'd like to mention that the CBI investigation is ongoing, and that will continue to go on until its closure, and we will work with the investigators as we can. And then next week, we will be having continued conversation about the fiscal impacts of COVID-19 and the implementation of the scenarios that City Council supported last week at the study session. We are collecting online sales tax, and we have seen an increase in that. And I have one slide that I would like to share on my screen for you. And what we are looking at here is sales tax projections. The city finance department have the first run numbers of our April sales tax. And this is different than what we discussed last week at the study session. If you look right here, our April number came in at 11% down over 2020 budget. This is a good thing. So these are for March collections. The original anticipation for this April number for March collections was 70%. As you can see in this comment over here, that changes our overall projected decrease in sales tax revenues to 27%. So that's a 27% decline, $8 million in sales tax that we're down. That does still maintain scenario 2. So we will be bringing staff will bring additional information to council at the study session next week. And that is my report for this evening.
That is good news. And hopefully that's, everybody's stocking up at those stores that are in fact open, and internet sales as well. But the motto there is buy local, buy a lot, and help the recovery, I guess. Thank you. Yeah, good, Councilor.
As always, I'd like to request that we get a copy of your slide presentation. Thank you.
That's a good one. That shows, that hopefully will facilitate our discussion next week in a more positive direction as well. With that, we have item 12.2, discussion and possible action concerning approval of city council working agreements. We have a newly revised working agreement. Perhaps if I can ask City Attorney Dirk Nelson to present that and ask about, and then open it up to the council for any comments. If you can describe what has transpired since our last meeting.
Okay. Following the last meeting, former Mayor Youssef and I were asked at that meeting to take our notes from the lengthy discussion the council had of a prior draft and try to make some changes that reflected in good faith what I had heard and what she had heard out of that discussion to give what was referred to as the 90% agreement. There were a number of items that were deleted. I had sent out a markup version, which I hope allowed council to easily see the changes that had been made to the prior draft. Again, based on my and Councilor Youssef's understanding of the discussion. So we did add a note at the top that sort of, again, tries to address the general consideration of making sure that nothing in the document was deemed to impair constitutional legal rights of any person. I don't know that I need to go through all of these changes, but that was the version that was sent out prior to the packet. That version was then condensed down to get the clean version, which is in the packet for discussion. There were a number of items that were deleted in their entirety. So the numbering is different than the original version. So any reference to former versions of numbering doesn't really fit anymore. For instance, number 5, the original number 5, the number 9, the number 11, or most of number 11, and 13 were deleted in their entirety. So the number of items has been reduced at this point accordingly, so that we now have 11 total. So I don't have anything else to add at this point about that. Sort of describes the process, and I think it's open to council at this point to discuss those drafts.
Thank you, Dirk, and thank you for the effort you put into this to get it to this point this evening. Councilors, may I have any thoughts from council? I might note that this document is proposed for adoption this evening. And we do have significant public comment on that. And perhaps we should have some discussion.
I'll jump in if nobody wants to go first. I think given the public participation that we heard tonight, I would like to suggest that we revisit what was formerly number 9. The last time we reviewed this, so I apologize if I don't have that right, but it is, I apologize, number 11, which was council members will work to honor the rules of boards and commissions as offering advice and recommendation to all of council as a whole, and will strive to avoid exercising undue influence over decisions or decision-making by these boards and commissions, or by attempting to influence the decision-making of individual members of those boards and commissions. I think by the time we got to this last time, it was late. There was certainly some fatigue in the process, and I think having some time to review those public comments and hear them again tonight, and also revisit the document myself, I think I would like to retract the idea that gets removed from the document.
I'll jump in here to clarify one point. That number 11 was in its former format was removed, but it was amended to read in a somewhat more concise fashion as the new number 9. So the concept, so the old number 11 was indeed removed, but the concept was replaced by slightly different language. So if you want to take a look at, and I can read number 9, the new number 9, if you would like. It's a little simpler version. And this is language that actually came out of some discussions that Councilor Youssef and I had in terms of the intent that was expressed by council. So the new number 9 reads, communications between council and advisory boards and commissions should be done to the greatest extent possible from body to honor positions taken by the council and each board as a whole. Again, that's intended to replace the former number 11.
And I find that new version to be more nebulous and not as clear. And I think looking at it, I looked at that before I made my statement. I think the other one's just much more comprehensive and clear to the intent that we're not here to petition the boards for our own individual purposes, and that idea is anathema to the actual goals of the council as a whole.
And I would just add, thank you, Councilor Bettine. The discussion I had with our city attorney was, the goal, I think, originally, it was an attempt to try to get, consent with council. I think we've made some really good work together. As Councilor Noseworthy noted at the last meeting, we 90% there, and we, I think, all recognized the desire at the time to have everyone in agreement and try to work towards some operating principles that we were all comfortable with, which may or may not ultimately work. I mean, I don't know, but the meaning of that that particular working agreement has been changed quite significantly. I will suggest that I agree with that. Also, after hearing the public comment from our chairs of 3 of our boards, I think that we should have the discussion. And the part that I believe that was we were trying to discuss or to address, which was removed, was the avoiding exercising undue influence over decision making, and that was the part that was removed. And what our city attorney came up with, the generic, I certainly don't disagree with it at all. I do agree with it, that, we're talking body to body, and honoring the positions taken by each council and each board as independent entities. There's not a whole lot to disagree with in that, I don't think. But it is I would concur that it is very different. And again, it was an attempt to try to work with all of council on this issue.
I'll jump in. First of all, thank you, Melissa and Dirk, for working on this in the interim. I think I'll continue to well, let me start by saying the original document, and no offense, but I worried about it being a rather authoritarian. And maybe it's just because I don't read in legalese. But I also believe that if you go back to the original principle, the role of council is to act as a whole in providing direction. And I am concerned that you're trying to prescribe every situation here, and that basically if we honor working as a whole, and let me point out that the genesis of this document did not honor that principle, in that it was not a full council discussion in the beginning, as indicated in the minutes, that it was more of a process that took place, with the attorney's initiation in a conversation in a mayor's meeting with the interim city manager, intending it to be a starting point. So my point is, I think it's already covered. And I think we also have to recognize that this very document, the genesis of it, didn't honor what we're trying to cover. So the bigger issue is, how do we actually, this document doesn't necessarily bind any one of us. How do we actually honor that the council acts as a whole, rather than needing all kinds of prescriptions?
I just want to chime in with my thoughts for the record on your allegations that this effort didn't come from council as a whole. I just have reiterated, I think, several times, and I will do it one more time, that it came out of the fact that this was originally planned for half a day of our retreat, this subject matter of council roles and responsibilities and how we work together. Due to the cancellation of that retreat, and also due to the change in mayorship and the transition in leadership, we brought it forward to council for discussion. And it was discussed at one of our meetings, and no action was taken. It was discussed. We were just further talking about how we work together, and that the goal of this project has been to talk about how we work together, how we communicate together effectively, how we work to avoid open meetings laws and transparency, how we recognize that we operate as one group, and just some fundamental outlining of some work that it helps us to operate more productively and effectively as a team. And I for one, think it's extremely valuable. We were going to have 2 full-day retreats in April. Those were canceled due to the COVID-19 virus. And honestly, this work has already, I think, been helpful for us to talk about how we work as a team. And that type of work is helpful for all groups, not just us, for all teams that work together productively. It's good to focus on, to take the time to work on these. It's difficult, but I think it's good work. And so I just wanted to add that.
And if I may just clarify, thank you, Melissa. If I just may clarify from the minutes, it just indicates Councilor Knowles really wanted clarification on when the council decided to direct the city attorney to draft the working agreement. Council Nelson said it came about from conversations in the mayor's meeting, and that he and the interim city manager intended it to be a starting point since the anticipated city council retreat had been delayed. My point being, though, that outcome, to your point that we need to work on this, yes, but to the point that in this process, council was not acting as a whole. Item number 3, individual city council members directed the city attorney. The council should work to avoid stating a position that could be construed to represent the position of council. We had not had a discussion to even talk about the timing of this. Council members should avoid surprises. It came as a surprise to me. So I agree with your statement about needing to come together with this. I want to point out that even in developing these working agreement, council didn't honor its own principles. And so for me, the biggest issue, and I don't want to keep belaboring it, is we've covered it. We reached a document that I thought we could reach at 90%. I think if you're starting to prescribe situations, it starts to be less useful for me.
I am getting again for the record, though, that what you're failing to discuss in your notes of the timing of how this came forward, again, is that in the midst of the pandemic, we lost meetings. And so there were discussions in which the mayor was having with the interim city manager and our city attorney, and we were not having meetings, they were canceled. So there was a lot of factors that need to be weighed into this. And again, it was a starting point brought forward to council for further discussion. No action was taken. It was just a recognition that this was on our retreat agenda, that retreat was being canceled, so we were bringing it forward. And that's how it happened. So just to clarify.
Can I get back in relative to just the point I was trying to make? Do you mind, Melissa? I just wanted to respond to Barbara since she was responding to me, despite that little red herring rabbit hole that you just went down. I think
civility first.
There's nothing uncivil about what I just said. Trying to distract the argument from one topic to another is not me accusing or being uncivil. I'm just trying to get back on track. Let's put it that way. I made a suggestion that previous item come back. Certainly you can disagree with that if you must. I'd just like to hear from councilors. I couldn't quite understand if Melissa was for that, against that. I agree with you, Melissa, that the new document does have somewhat similar, and this is a public record. So if we all agree that we're not going to politic the boards and commissions, certainly that's the reason that was put in there, is to try to avoid that. There must have been some sense that we needed to have some direction on that. And so if we can agree to that, I'm fine with the new language, but I'd like to have the old language back in there. That was my point. Would love to get the take of the other counselors.
Well, to Councilor Noseworthy's point, I have to agree that for me, we had a significant number of items on a list for our retreat. And I'm not sure how this one got prioritized and brought to the top without having that conversation with the entirety of council. So I do want to say that from my point of view, I was also surprised that things were prioritized without a conversation. Just want to make that clear. Thank you.
And I would like to respond to that because this was brought up in public as we planned our actual retreat well back. I don't remember the date. I do recall the public session when this was discussed. Our current mayor brought it up at the time that this was a topic of discussion that he would like to see. He actually suggested that a whole day be spent on it. So it's not something that wasn't brought up in public. It's not something that surprised anybody on this council if they were paying attention to that meeting. So to continue to revisit the idea that you were surprised by it is just a failure to pay attention.
I would have to disagree with you, Chris, and I actually think you're bordering on a lack of civility. I'm not referring to...
I agree with you. Thank you.
May I finish, please? I'm not referring to the fact that we did have a discussion about having this topic at our retreat. I completely agree with that, and I support it. However, we did not, as a council, have a conversation about bringing this to the #1 priority to have it be happening now.
I would also suggest, thank you. I would also suggest that this could have been a very quick discussion. These items were, suggested by the city attorney. Originally, they were not complicated. These are not things that most councils would have a hard time approving. That it's taken this long is simply the product of this council's inability to get through very simple matters. This should have been a 10, 15-minute conversation, but here we are in the third session debating it again, and I'm happy to continue to have the debate until we get to the final version so we can actually act accordingly. Thank you.
I can see
Chris, so as you once said to me, Chris, I'm
struggling. He's trying to.
That, I'm sorry, Chris, I'm responding to Chris because he was stating something to me. I'm just responding.
He's on mute.
So I'm not on mute.
Dean is. I'm trying to say.
I understand. So that's his problem. I'm going to say something to you that you once said.
I'm going to ask you to stop for a moment.
Just because you don't agree.
We need to bring this off this
we don't
order.
have a conversation.
And so I'm going to implement, now that I'm off mute, I'm going to implement, I reached for my gavel, I found it, so we can have a little decorum. And I'd like to just bring this back. It's my turn for some comments. And I'd like to say that, yes, we are at a 90% document. And I would I would definitely dispute Councilor Noseworthy's discussion about this, as the formation came from the city attorney. The mayor was not the only one that asked for this item to be brought forward. Tonight we have a public comment from 3 of our major boards and commissions, all of which are distant, and they're the other 10% of this 90% agreement. It's a two-way street with that regard to that omitted item. And they all are asking us to put that back in. I would say we are at 90%. We should recognize that they have at least 10% say in the formation of this document. Therefore, they should be heard. But I should say those same people had conversations with our city attorney about infractions by members of city council with their boards. And I might say, if I want to get very specific about the term unique or undue influence, we can only go to the April 5th, 2020 Natural Lands Advisory Board meeting, in which case we should all listen to those proceedings if we need to. And I hope that we don't need to. But that is exactly why you, councilors, received this email from 3 of our board chairs tonight, to understand they feel this is a very important thing to communicate and have further input from their boards, to be heard and not controlled. They are our advisory boards, they're not our puppets. And that's exactly what needs to happen. And I am one for re-implementation of that particular clause in its original text back into our document, and that we bring this back in 2 weeks with that included, and we act on it at that time. And if we need to listen to the April 5th, 2020 meeting, we'll listen to it in 2 weeks if we need to understand exactly what they're talking about. And I encourage each of us to do that.
And Dean, if I may, actually, it was the March 9th meeting for the National Plans Advisory Board.
Thank you for that clarification.
And that was brought to the attention of a few of us. And that specifically addresses the issue of the exercising of undue influence. And to speak further, to clarify further for Councilor Bettine, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I just was kind of talking about kind of how we got to this point of trying to do the new language, because it's an attempt to try to get some unanimity here, but I don't, again, know if that's possible. And hearing from our advisory board chairs, I would agree that language is important, and I honestly don't see any problem with it.
So I would like to go back to number 3 then. No, actually it's not number 3, it's number 8. The council will work promptly to initiate the resolution of disputes between council members so they don't fester or escalate in order to foster the most productive working relationship and environment as possible. Council will work to communicate an issue or concern that one has with another city councilor and share in an appropriate, private, and timely manner. So what I just heard here is a violation already of that guideline, which is that apparently there's at least 2 of you who have some issues with my performance as a city councilor and as a liaison to the Natural Lands Board, and none of you have mentioned it. This is a continuing situation. I have tried to set meetings up with 2 of you, and you have either not responded to my requests or you've canceled meetings that have been set up, not by your initiation, but by mine to have conversations. And I've received emails from at least 2 of you city councilors that made accusations about my behavior. And when I replied to them, neither one of you bothered to acknowledge that at least part of the accusations you made were incorrect. And so you've already violated this agreement, and this is the way you behave. And I don't know why some fancy words on a piece of paper are going to make any difference.
I make correction there. I don't have any problem with your behavior. That was cited by the chair of the board that you are liaison from this council to, directly, not me. I want to clarify that. I don't have a problem with you doing that. The boards do. And it's not just that board. It's 3 out of our critical boards. And if we need to get specific about that, and if you feel accused, it's not us, it's the other 10% that needs to be part of this document. If they feel council misusing them, excuse me. If council feels that council is, if the boards feel that council is misusing the purpose and the intent and the integrity of those boards, then that's a problem. We need to address it, we need to understand it, and we need to resolve it. We need to document it, we need to put it in writing, and we need to include it in our working documents so that it doesn't occur again. Ever.
I am not referring to the topic that you are discussing. I'm referring to council's behavior about that topic and communication about it with me, which did not occur in any way, shape, or form. And if you will understand that what I was presenting to the board was reaction from the community and how upset they were about how a meeting had been handled. And I apologized for being strident in my comments because I was very upset about the fact that I had received so much negative feedback about how it had been handled by the board. And I apologized to them for the way I expressed it, but not for what I expressed, because it was what had been expressed to me and they had not heard it from the community members directly.
Excellent. Do I have an action that we can bring forward as a motion? Or
well, I just wanted to, I don't know, you mentioned earlier, Dean, that we might ask for modifications. I guess that's how I started out this conversation is and I apologize to the entire group because I know you're tired of this. The concept of bringing that back sounds like it has council support. So I guess I would ask that the city attorney consider putting that back together as we've discussed. We may need to approve it in the next round if that's acceptable to the council. I do have another one, if you'll indulge me.
Sure, and then we can wrap this up.
Yeah. So the last one is just that, and again, I apologize. I think it's not a great excuse, but it is my excuse. I felt pretty exhausted by the last round of this. And I think if we go to the new document that's in our agenda packet today, it would have previously been number 14. It's now number 11. I believe this paragraph was originally drafted by Kim. I could be wrong, but I think it was inserted here by Kim. And then at some point it was modified to try to include a broader spectrum of communication from council out to their constituents, to newsletters. Somebody, Barbara, I think, mentioned last week, postings on the internet and Facebook and whatnot. And I think there was some concern that this was trying to restrict the flow of information in those types of formats, such as a newsletter or posts on someone's social media account. And though it wasn't my edit, I want to remind everyone of, I do, having thought about it a little bit more, support the idea that this be a little broader. I think it was a good idea of Kim's to put it in here, but I think that the concept of broadening this communication as it relates to if a counselor feels they have a personal position, that they should stress that it's only their position and not the position of counsel, whether it's their personal communication or their as if they're acting as a counselor and they're communicating with the constituency. It seems fair that we should all be cautious of that. And so I think to broaden this with that included, that really all communications relative to being a counselor should specify that position, whether it's the counselor's personal position or if the council indeed has grappled with the issue and made a decision. And at that point, you could communicate that council had made that decision. So I just think that should be a little broader. I wanted to make that suggestion.
Excellent.
I think it's in there though, and I think that second, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it says additionally, if it is the interviewed or submitting counselor's personal position and counsel has not agreed to that, it should be stressed to the media as such by the counselor. Do you want it broader than that?
Yeah, it is in there, but the whole paragraph has been restricted to speaking to the media. And so, yeah, my thought was really if you're communicating as a counselor, that if you're communicating a personal opinion, you should make that pretty clear. This is my personal opinion. I think that this capital project should be built. The council hasn't weighed in on it yet. This is how I feel. And I think it's pretty basic. I think we all have an understanding of that, but if that clause is going to be in there, I think it should be broader to that extent. Okay, thanks for clarifying.
The media is pretty limiting. It's really to the community. It's the most important aspect. We identify the media as a conduit to the community, but there obviously are a number of other methods of connecting with the community that are encouraged. So I believe that should be broadened in that respect. If we were to modify that particular item and then reinstall the language for the previous number 9, if Dirk is following this, I think that the gist of modification is apparent and dovetails with what the public testimony reflected as well. I'd like to see that those two specific items modified and brought back to us.
Can I just clarify too? I believe it was originally issue number 11. Got that, Dirk? Okay.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. In which case there's, doesn't need to be action on this unless there's a proposal to adopt this document as written. Or we can take action on directing the, we can either adopt this or take action to direct the city attorney to make revisions and bring it back in 2 weeks.
I would move that we make the revisions, if it can be agreed upon to do such, that I suggested, and then bring it back in a couple of weeks.
There's been a motion made. Do I hear a second?
To bring it back in a couple of weeks with revisions?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, well then we'll have a roll call, please.
We have discussion first, because the one thing, sorry, I don't want to belabor this, but, I haven't, I think the majority of council has suggested that we're interested, especially in light of the public discussion that we heard today, in bringing back that issue on the, exercising undue influence over decision-making of boards and commissions. And I haven't heard from all of our counselors yet. So before we vote on this, I would be interested in hearing the perspective of Councilor Noseworthy and Mayor Pro Tem Baxter on adding it back to the original language. And if you have issues with it, just if you could quickly summarize those, I guess, or however long you want to summarize those. I'd just be interested in hearing from you.
Thank you. No, thank you. I think I covered it before when I described both the genesis of this document and the intent. And my view is that if council agrees to the very first principle, which we act as a whole rather than an individual, then nothing else is needed. We act as a whole and we remind ourselves that we act as a whole. And so for me, it's trying to get extremely prescriptive in what I think, if we honor the intent of probably the first 4 items on there, we probably have covered most everything else. So I think it's, I question the usefulness of it, and it seems prescriptive.
Thank you.
Since you asked, Melissa, we did have a couple other public comments in a previous meeting that were not so complimentary to this document. And I have to say that it definitely seems like there is a attempt to restrict freedom of speech, not just on the part of city councilors, but also on the part of advisory board members. And because there are at least 2 areas in this document that Councilor Youssef, Councilor Bettine, and Mayor Brookie are not following, and they seem to believe that these things should be done. I don't see how, as I said before, that putting words on paper is going to change those behaviors. So I just don't see this as being a useful conversation. I've said that from the beginning. And I believe that any community member who volunteers to sit on a board or commission should not be forced to give up their right to speak to any counselor of their choosing to discuss any topic that they wish. And neither should any counselor give up the right to talk with any resident, including advisory board members, particularly when requested by that resident or board member. It doesn't have anything to do with undue influence. I don't think any of us intend to have undue influence on our board members. But there are things that they would like to know from city councilors at a 30,000-foot level that they don't know, because they feel it would help inform their decision-making. So when the 3 of you don't discuss things with me continuously and in many occasions, I don't believe that you're going to change overnight because of a piece of paper. So I find this to be somewhat of a farce, and that's just my position.
Since we're in the discussion, I just want to respond to a couple of those things. I think Councilor Noseworthy, I think in the past year, if the council had been able to honor the intent of the existing ethics document relative to acting as one council and so forth, a lot of this document probably wouldn't be necessary. It wasn't necessary in previous councils, to my recollection. I think the actions of council have made it necessary just to revisit these things as protocols that we need to remind ourselves of. And to Councilor Baxter's statement that keeps coming up, which I think is this freedom of speech issue, is a red herring meant to distract from the concept of the document itself. There's nothing in the document that impedes upon free speech whatsoever. The document does not support that statement. So, but thank you.
I wanted to just add to that too, just because I think it's so critically important that not be suggested. It's no, I think this council has made a lot of attempts to encourage participation and outreach and communication. It's been a strategy. I mean, an effort on the part of all of us. I think that as a result of you suggesting that, Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Baxter, that is why our city attorney added that in, because there's no desire here to impede in any way anyone's constitutional rights. And just to remind everyone, this document did originate in an attorney's hands. So I felt confident that it wasn't impeding on anyone's constitutional rights. And that certainly was not ever my objective. And or to eliminate or to control communication. But the goal is, I think that the language, more specifically, what I wanted to kind of get feedback on from, but I'll stop with that request with Councilor Noseworthy, Mayor Pro Tem Baxter, was with that item on the advisories. And if there was any, there was an attempt to work together. There was an attempt to come to some language that was very universal in nature, in my opinion, with the revised document that our city attorney suggested. That was language from Dirk Nelson, that we worked to the greatest sense possible from body to body to honor the positions taken by council and boards as a whole, recognizing that, when we speak as individuals, if we are not speaking on positions taken as a council, that has to be, we don't want to do that. So that language I was very happy with that language as well. But then I did hear during public participation today from 3 of our chairs that they wanted it readdressed. So I was very willing to readdress that language. I remain, hopeful that we can really work at trying to work productively together as a team. I think we're more effective if we can. And I think that some of us did need some reminding. We all needed some reminding on how we work together. And I will suggest that there's a suggestion that we aren't honoring this agreement. And I would suggest, Mayor Pro Tem Baxter, that there's quite a few examples of work that has been done as well on your end that doesn't necessarily fit with this. But I don't think it's very effective to sit here and call each other out on that. What we're trying to do is set the framework where we can work together and do some good work together going forward in 2020, in a year of time when we really need to be working together back to the basics. And to me, this is basics. This is basic operating agreements. There's not an attempt to control. There's an attempt to address some of the basics. We don't direct staff. We don't speak for the council as a whole. These are really basic, generic statements, in my opinion. So I just wanted to state that again. And we are in a discussion. We do have a motion and a second on the table of whether we'll bring this forward. But that's kind of where I wanted to go, is to see if we could, again, bring it back to me understanding your positions a little bit better. And I guess I'm just having a hard time with it.
And let me just add, thank you, Melissa. I was comfortable with the language under item 9 as it stands. I find any other assertion trying to be starting to be unnecessary. And then to your point about calling out, I think that's relevant. I think we need to recognize that originally it was the mayor who started calling out another council member here in this public session. So I think that your point is well taken. And I think the best things are served when we have these conversations one-on-one in private in a respectful manner. If people have an issue of how someone is behaving as a counselor, then another counselor, probably does have a responsibility to raise that. So I want to recognize that, but I also want to say that it's probably best done in private.
I think you're right.
I would also, Melissa, in response to that, I would also say that I too thought that the changes to number 9 were acceptable, and to go back to what they were prior is not acceptable. And to your point that there are things that you believe that I have not done to your satisfaction or to council's satisfaction, those things should probably have been discussed with me prior to a public meeting. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll respond that couple things. Number one, when I was mayor, I faced the difficult task of trying to, deal with a divisive council. And I had many conversations with individual counselors, some that were productive and some not so productive. I think all of us probably remembers those conversations. And so there was times when honestly, I felt that some of the conversations that I have were not working and were not effective. And therefore I had to resort to other alternatives, especially when it came with, in response to email communication. And that was a very difficult situation. It's a very difficult situation that we put our staff in. And I had many conversations with our attorney about it. And so I didn't feel always that those private conversations were a productive means of affecting change that was needed for the group. I'm sorry to say that was the case. And that's why this got on the item, I believe. I mean, the current mayor did bring it up in a public meeting. I appreciate Councilor Bettine recognizing that. But that came up because it was, and it was discussed in a study session that we needed to address that. We don't need to go back there anymore. But the other thing that you're suggesting, Mayor Pro Tem Baxter, is that you are okay with the, back to where I was trying to go originally. You are okay back with the revised language that the city attorney had worked on. But that was not clear to me because you had eliminated it in the working agreement that you sent to council completely, I believe, unless I'm incorrect.
I may have, but it's in here now, and this is what we're discussing now.
Okay, so you are that's what I was trying to clarify. So,
Melissa, I don't support this document's philosophy in total at all. I support certain aspects of it, and I actually support Councilor Noseworthy's prelude, if you will, to the numbered items about how we work together, generosity, curiosity, respect, transparency, communication. And I don't feel like this is how we have worked as a council for a very long time.
I would agree with you.
And so I specifically think that we actually ought to have a much broader definition or structure of what it is that we're asking us to do, as evidenced by Councilor Noseworthy's recommendations, rather than being so specific. And to try to actually I have tried to communicate with Mayor Brookie over the last 3 months and prior to that numerous times, and usually he doesn't even return a text asking him to chat or have a conversation. And it's incredibly frustrating because we're supposed to be working together, and we've never actually had a conversation about how the mayor and mayor pro tem can work together because Dean has not found the time nor responded.
Dean, are you on?
Kim Baxter, how many emails did you send out and how many emails did I answer today from you specifically? I take huge offense at that. We've had lunches that simply did not work out well, and you know that very well. If we need to get into really specifics, which I do not want to do, we can, regarding communication. And simply, I don't have, So you texted me at 8:50 something this morning. I am at work, I have a business, and I will talk to you at an appropriate time. We had over a dozen emails today, back and forth on different things, including specific things that you wanted to talk about. I figure that is enough chat for one day with you. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, could I suggest we end this just?
Wait. So I'm not referring to today's text. I'm actually referring to the text that
You
occurred.
just did. You just did.
I know,
You talked about
I'm referring to, I understand that you might not be able to respond in the same day, but I'm referring to texts I sent over a month and a half ago when you were out of town and when you were back in town, requesting that when you came back, if we could sit down and talk. You never responded to those texts. Then I finally followed up and you said you just didn't have time.
This is not.
One lunch that we had did not go well.
Hey, guys, this is not.
It was months ago. So if
I'm gonna stop this conversation.
bring up specifics, I have the right to respond to him. Thank you.
Okay, are you done? We will call for a vote. Thank you.
Sorry.
Ben?
Counselor Youssef,
Yes.
Counselor Bettine,
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy,
No,
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
No.
and Mayor Brookie.
Yes. Thank you, and we're moving on to the next topic. And which is 12.3, discussion and possible action concerning council executive session to discuss personnel matter, specifically to discuss personnel matters involving 3 council appointees regarding COVID-19 related to the budgetary issues as permitted in the law. Don't have that specific recitation here. As in 24-6-402 F2. I'd like to say that we did meet in council in executive session, and as a result of that executive session, do we have a motion regarding the topics discussed to actually come to a decision on those topics?
I'll jump in. The discussion was, like I said, of the appointees taking a furlough along with all the other city employees that have been asked to do so. And as council, if I understand it correctly, has also agreed to take a furlough of 20% cut in pay. And the appointees were, all 3 of them, very forthright in suggesting that they thought this was an appropriate thing for them to do as well, so that we lead from example. And so I think that through the discussion, we found a way that it could make it work during this pandemic time period. And in an effort to reduce the budget, that I think that if we need a vote, we might want to address the fact that we would agree that our 3 appointees should take a 20% furlough.
Thank you, Councilor Baxter, or Councilor Noseworthy. That's summarizes it very well. And I might add that although it was an executive session, there was an offering unanimous support amongst our 3 appointees to accept that responsibility to 20% reduction in their salaries, and to be in step with all our other employees and in fact city council. So which I felt very comfortable with and appreciative of. So with that, do I have a motion or a further discussion amongst councilors?
I made a motion, you just need a second.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second the motion.
It's been motioned and seconded. Do we have can we have a roll call, please?
I just wanted to add, if I could, Mayor, sorry. I keep I won't make a habit of chiming in, but I did want to also just express my thanks to our 3 appointees and their recognition of the need to be fair and transparent and do what's right for the organization, but also role model the behavior that they're implementing themselves. So I really appreciate that. And we had difficult discussions around it because we recognize how hard they're working right now, and to furlough our appointees is a very, very difficult situation for our city. And I think we all have to recognize that there will be implications in the actions that we're taking, and it will result in an impact to workloads and their ability to less hours. So it's a difficult situation that we're facing. Decisions not being made easily. Discussion has not been easy.
Thank you, Councilor Youssef. That was, very well said. The expectations of the general public as well as council needs to be that, we are arriving at a 20% reduction in output, and we can't accept that 20% reduction in output from these key individuals. The law is the law, and the city manager needs to address virtually all the issues that are being coming forward at this point in time, but they will attempt to reduce their activity to be compliant with that furlough, because that is the law, and we have to accept that that is the case, and adjust our inquiries and our expectations of those three appointees. So with that, can I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy,
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
Yes?
All right,
Yes?
thank you. And Councilor Youssef
Yes.
and Mayor Brookie.
Yes, and thank you for that vote. Moving on to council reports and actions. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Baxter. Any thoughts for the general public?
Thank you, Dean. Actually, I thought that you might want to give the general public an update on our Sladen conversation eventually when you come around to it. Our search firm for our city manager to kind of update the community on what's happening with that. So I just thought you might want to do that since you were taking the lead on that conversation. I also had, in the context of Councilor Noseworthy's comment about the city council also reducing our remuneration. I don't know that we have a time or a date set for that conversation. I'd like to see us put that on the calendar so that we can have a discussion about that and see what council decides to do for their own pay. I also had brought up the idea, and Dean, you mentioned that the working group or the policy group, I'm not sure what the actual name of it is, about whether or not council wanted to take any action concerning face coverings in the community. So I think that could be an agenda item. And I also, I would like to suggest the council needs to have a conversation about, and this will probably take place more on next Tuesday in the study session, but concerning council's role and responsibility in the layoffs that have to occur in the community, in the city. And then the other thing, which I'm pretty excited about, is I'm going to be having office hours again. I'm going to be starting those up, and they will be next week from May 11th, and they will all be done by Zoom. And there will be an announcement of it. Interim City Manager Blake knows that I'm going to be doing this, so now she has the dates. And my request is that anybody who would like to have office hours, contact me at kimbaxter@durangogov.org, and I will arrange a schedule so that there could be maximum of 10 people in each Zoom meeting so that I can hear from the community and answer questions. And I will be announcing this also on my Facebook page and all of that so that everybody knows about it. And I look forward to it because in this time, I think it's really critical that our city council stay in touch with the community members. And I feel that since we're all isolating ourselves and doing a very good job of it, that communication is probably suffering, and I would like to be more engaged with the community and hear more about what they have to say. So I just wanted to let everybody know that was happening.
Thank you. Councilor Noseworthy?
Yeah, thank you. I was actually looking for the report from the Alliance board meeting yesterday, and I'm not able to pull it up on my computer, but I attended the Alliance board meeting and a bit of a review of where we think what we're looking at, and the activities of the Alliance in helping with the recovery effort. Let me give a great shout out, quite complimentary of the work that Scott and Alex are doing on that activity with the city as a whole. So I wanted to pass that on. The Alliance investor meeting will be next week by Zoom. And so we'll be looking at that. And typically at those meetings, I give an update for the city, and I usually pull a lot, Amber, from the city manager's report and recent activities. So that'll be taking place as well. And I too am, want to just a shout out to the public that I am available by phone. If you want a Zoom discussion, I'm happy to do that as well. Just need to reach me either through email, and I'm happily responding to those. I try to get back within a day if people reach out to me. So I think that's very important. And I'd like to suggest that in light of this conversation tonight, I think what might be really helpful, and I'm going to ask this of the mayor under like reports and actions maybe, I think some one-on-one meetings could be very helpful. I think that not in the spirit of, not in issues of discussing policy, but just efforts to understand each other a little better. So I'm going to reach out on my own to try to schedule meetings with each of you, because I think that's important. I did that the first quarter when I was on new to city council. I wasn't able to meet with everyone because of your schedules, but I found it very helpful. And so I will be reaching out to each of you to schedule a one-on-one meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baxter, or Councilor Noseworthy, I'm sorry. Councilor Bettine.
Yeah, I just wanted to give the community an update on the Feed to the Front Lines initiative that I've been involved in. I wanted to congratulate that group. It raised almost the goal of $60,000 to feed 100 people a day for 60 days during this time. And I wanted to just name a few people publicly. Ryan Lowe and Jamie Miller of the Orr House are really the people that started this out and got the community moving this direction. Monique DiGiorgio of Local First has been instrumental in putting it together from a not-for-profit standpoint, fundraising standpoint. Christina Rinderly has been our fundraising committee almost entirely by herself. The fire department was added to the list of people who are now benefiting from the program. San Juan Basin Health Department was added to the list of folks who are now benefiting from this program on a weekly basis. I want to thank Mercy Medical, Paul Gelos in particular out there who coordinates their food service delivery. And we added Jessica Buell and her team at Lucky Services last week, and they volunteered their services in the community to do all the deliveries to this organization for free. And I think, all of these people are working super hard to support local restaurants during a time where they have very few avenues to make revenue, as well as line workers who are doing so much.
Thank you, Chris. Councilor Youssef.
Thank you. Is there an echo?
You're okay.
Is this okay?
Oh, there is an echo.
A little bit.
I'm not sure why. I will try. I wanted to remind everyone after our interim city manager's update on incidences of crime. I had some conversations with a resident this weekend who called me directly, and then I called staff, and it was handled well. But I wanted to remind people that for non-emergency situations, with regards to if you don't think it's an emergency, you can call our City of Durango dispatch. It's such an important number to know and to have, and that number is 385-2900. And that is a really good number for everyone to put in your phones. If you see crime, if you're seeing that's not emergent, but you want to report graffiti or trash, you can take photos, you can and call this number so they can respond. I also wanted to suggest that I agree with Councilor Baxter on the discussion for council furloughs. I would love to have that agenda item added to a future topic. I wanted to let you know as well that I am not having office hours after holding them for quite some time. And also we're in the midst of the pandemic, but I have been in contact with a lot of residents as well, and am still very available and more available than I was just for one-on-ones. I've been spending a lot of time on the phone with residents, and I appreciate it. It's nice to be able to get that one-on-one connection and conversation happening as well. I spoke in that regard to Ned Overend today. He followed up with me, and I wanted to communicate. I told him that I would communicate with council about, of course, we were talking about e-bikes, and he wanted to share with me his thoughts that the other communities that have implemented trials around e-bikes have had no complaints or issues with regards to their trials. Jeffco did 2 one-year trials, and Phoenix and Scottsdale did a trial. All of them where the trials went smoothly. He is suggesting that people don't recognize how popular e-bikes are. In his work with Specialized, Specialized is suggesting that e-bikes will account for 50% of their sales for this year, which is huge. And he's suggesting during this time of need to attract tourists and to be open, that we as a council consider the opportunity to be more amenable to alternative forms of recreation. And specifically, he's also suggesting that we not only do the trial that has been recommended by our advisory boards for the Twin Buttes area. He would really like to see if we could somehow make this happen in Horse Gulch. So I wanted to relay that message from Ned Overend. And I also wanted to suggest that in this time of furloughs, as we just unanimously agreed that it's something we have to do, that we need to be conscientious as well and have discussions with council on how we can get to how we can run the most efficient meetings possible, given that all the staff members who are on this call these are hours that they're attending our meetings. And so it's almost 9 o'clock now, that's several hours that they're adding. That's part of their furloughed time. So we just need to be conscientious of that, I think, as a council. And we may want to have discussions about how we can really try to work together to make these meetings run as efficiently as possible. And then lastly, I think that our mayor is going to bring up the email from Rachel Landis, so I won't bring that up. But also, I'm hearing again. I attended a webinar today with CML. And I'll just briefly summarize that it was on surveys that DOLA did in coordination with CML and CCI and SDA, as well as the Economic Development Council of Colorado. And it was kind of a review of their summaries of these surveys. And what I just wanted to relay to council in attending this webinar was our staff is really doing a good job implementing a lot of the strategies that are being done throughout the state. And I was really, really happy to hear that. I felt very like we're really on track. We're tracking with what is going on. So I wanted to commend our staff on their efforts to work so hard to be reactive in this time of the pandemic. A couple things is that, similar budget strategies. Some of the communities were also one of the strategies that they noted that we haven't talked about, but I felt like it was important to discuss, is that they're trying their best to dedicate funds to marketing, to try to market their communities in this time to support their businesses. And I did want to communicate. I shared that with our interim city manager after attending the webinar, and she did remind me that we are supporting the efforts of visit, Colorado, visit Durango through Dado, and for a pretty significant amount through our lodger's tax. So I felt really good about that as well. And yeah, it was good discuss. It was good to hear that we're really tracking well with other counties and municipalities in the state. That's it. Thanks. Dean, you're on mute.
The first thing to have more efficient meetings is to figure out where the mute button is. So thank you for that. I concur totally with your suggestion that we learn how to run our meetings a little more efficiently, and hopefully we don't have as many difficult discussions as we had this evening. I would like to, you mentioned Rachel Landis. We did get an email from Rachel asking about fire protection, specifically for the train and what measures were being taken. I think council to date, your discussions have been concerning, is the train going to run, and when is an appropriate reopening due to the coronavirus? But I believe equally as important is, what measures when the train runs, assuming it will run, hopefully it will run, what fire protection measures are being taken, not only by the train, but the city, the county, and all parties related to protection and the new measures being implemented relative to fire protection throughout. So I think that's an additional item we'll put on our agenda for a study session next week, just to get a little update regarding that. And by that time, we may know about the train and a potential reopening of that as well. I'd like to say, in terms of information flow, Councilor Baxter mentioned that, there's not a lot of information, but, if you look for it, the chamber, the bid, the Home Builders Association, the Durango Herald, and particularly, and Local First are some of our partners that have done an incredible job of disseminating information to businesses and citizens alike in terms of what opportunities you have for PPP, low interest loans, what the regulations are for reopening. And I say this because Monday is the day that we will have a partial reopening of many of our services and businesses in Durango, which many of the businesses have been looking to. The policy group, the policy group was mentioned. That is largely San Juan Basin Health Department. Myself and the interim city manager sit on that policy group. I sit on it as mayor. Mayor Bayfield, Ignacio, Pagosa Springs, and various council members in those locales sit on that policy group too. But primarily it's a medically oriented tracking of exactly what is happening in our town. We're talking about all the policies and how we safely roll out a reopening of Durango and La Plata County. So if you're looking for information, I would go first to San Juan Basin Health Department website. Absolutely the most complete. If there's too much information there, go to the chamber's site. If there's not enough information there, go to the bid site if you're a business person. But everybody has really stepped up to disseminate exactly what's happening, what to expect as we reopen Durango, and that self-reporting questionnaire if you're a business. Get that done, understand what your obligations are as a business as you open up, and hopefully have a safe reopening. I can say that the policy group meets Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It includes the CEOs of ASH, Mercy Medical Center. We've engaged the CEO of San Juan Medical in Farmington, San Juan Regional Hospital, excuse me, and because of what's going on down there. And I want to say, just make a mention to the general public of what the reality of what's happening around us medically. San Juan County, New Mexico, Farmington, i.e. Farmington, has 736, this is as of 4 o'clock yesterday, so it's another day today, and I'll tell you how fast it's just changing. As of 4 o'clock yesterday, 736 positive cases. They had 57 deaths so far in Farmington. The day before, That increased on Friday from Thursday by 115 cases and 12 fatalities. That means Friday afternoon, 12 people died in Farmington. That's just Farmington. So then we move on to Rio Ribo County, which is this Hickory Apache area. They have 24 cases and 10 deaths. So that means that obviously there's no testing. If people are dying before they get tested, the positive count is not significant. But in fact, that's what's happening 50 miles south of us. We should all know about what's happening on nationally. The biggest hotspot in the country right currently is the Navajo Nation. There's 2,373 reported cases of COVID-19 on the reservation. There's 73 people have died so far and on the reservation, and that was 232 was the uptick from the day before. 232 cases on the reservation from the day before. So what that tells us as the policy group is that is really rapidly, just as things are trying to subside in Durango, what's happening south of us is really rapidly increasing. And it's of note that, you know, many of our workforce come from Shiprock, Aztec, Farmington, New Mexico. The governor of New Mexico shut down, extended their lockdown, if you want to call it lockdown, for another period of time, which includes liquor stores of all things. So if you look at liquor stores in Durango, you will find New Mexico plates migrating daily up here to be either buy pot, liquor, or hopefully they'll invest in other opportunities here in Durango as we open up as well. But in fact, they're coming from an area that is being infected at a high level right now. So we'd all need to be, this is serious stuff. The gloves, the masks, everything is so important to make sure that we don't lose the really great effort that we put forth for a month and a half now in terms of distancing and protective measures to date. So that's when we see people, 200 rafts rolling down the Animas River in party boats and people partying on the beach as if it was Fort Lauderdale. That's not what we need to have happen in Durango right now, because that will only cause a rebound that we are not prepared to handle. So as mayor of Durango, I just implored cooperation. Let's get through this for another couple of weeks. Wear your masks, wear gloves. When you go to those businesses, do your distancing. And this is not a party. This is we need your money. We need the economy to come back, but we do not need a rebound at this point in time. So please pay attention. It's serious stuff, and we hope that we all get through it and can make this thing go away quickly. Thank you. And that's all I have for tonight. With that, if there's no other business, I would like to call an end to this meeting. May 5th, City Council, 2020. Thank you and good night.